It is 6:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. A 34-year-old professional is standing in a brightly lit kitchen, staring at a smartphone. The math on the screen no longer makes sense. He is looking at an order for a single fast food meal, a burger and fries. The food itself costs $20, but by the time he reaches the final checkout screen, the total is $35. He looks at his bank account. A basic car payment feels like a mortgage. A piece of secondhand clothing costs the same as a brand new one. Every minor convenience, every piece of hardware, every subscription seems to drain a little more of his income than it did 5 years ago. We complain about this constantly. We blame inflation. We blame greedy corporations. But inflation is a biological function of the economy. It is a slow, expected rise across the board. What this 34-year-old is experiencing right now is not inflation. It is a quiet, structural re-engineering of the modern transaction. The things you used to buy have fundamentally changed. The products look the same. The branding is exactly the same. But the plumbing underneath them has been rebuilt. You are no longer just paying for a product. You are paying to service a hidden chain of regulatory loopholes, private monopolies, and corporate debt that you were never supposed to see. To understand where the money is actually going, we have to look at 7 specific things that are no longer worth your money, starting with the phone in his hand. He looks at the food delivery app. $20 of food has become a $35 purchase. Where did the extra $15 go? The mainstream narrative is that delivery apps just got greedy, but the truth requires us to go back to 1999. The internet was new. Silicon Valley was flooded with unregulated capital. A man named Louis Borders, the founder of Borders Books, decided to revolutionize human convenience. He started a company called Webvan. The promise was simple: order groceries online, and a human being will drive them directly to your house. The venture capitalists loved it. They poured $1.2 billion into Webvan. It was going to change the world. In July of 2001, just 2 years later, the company filed for bankruptcy. It was completely obliterated.
The reason it failed is the same reason your food delivery is so expensive today. The fundamental unit economics of paying a human being to drive a 2-ton metal machine across a city just to hand another human being a small, temperature-sensitive bag of food is mathematically impossible to make profitable. That math has not changed since 2001. The only reason you enjoyed cheap food delivery over the last 10 years is because venture capitalists were quietly subsidizing your delivery fees to build market share. They were paying for half your sandwich. Now, that venture capital money is gone. Wall Street demands profit. And so the delivery apps turned to the restaurants. They began charging local businesses a 30% commission on every order. But there is a hidden factor making it even worse. In 2010, the United States government passed the Durbin Amendment as part of the Dodd-Frank Act. The goal was to help small businesses by capping the swipe fees that banks could charge when a customer used a debit card. But the politicians left a massive loophole. They did not cap the swipe fees on credit cards. Today, when you pay for your delivery order using a premium rewards credit card, the processing fee can reach up to 3%. That fee is passed down the chain. Put yourself in the shoes of a local restaurant owner. You are already giving up 30% of the order to the delivery app. Now you are losing another 3% to an uncapped credit card swipe fee. The margins in the restaurant business are usually only 5 to 10% to begin with. The math is fatal. The restaurant has absolutely no choice. They mathematically must artificially inflate their digital menu prices just to survive the transaction. You aren't paying for food anymore. You are paying for a 1999 logistical failure, a 2010 regulatory loophole, and the silent transfer of wealth from your local restaurant to a credit card company. Frustrated by the delivery fees, our professional deletes the app. He grabs his keys and drives to the local drive-thru instead. He looks up at the glowing menu board, expecting a cheap alternative. But the value menu is gone. The $1 burger is a relic of the past. Why did the cheap fast food menu disappear so suddenly? People assume McDonald's and other giants simply realized consumers would pay more. The truth is that the death of the dollar menu was not a corporate strategy. It was a civil war. In 2018, deep inside the McDonald's ecosystem, a rebellion took place. The public didn't see it. It happened in private boardrooms and frustrated emails. McDonald's is largely a franchise business. Corporate doesn't own most of the restaurants. Independent owners do. Corporate makes its money by taking a percentage of total top-line sales. Therefore, corporate executives only care about one thing: foot traffic. They want to bring as many humans through the door as possible, at any cost. Their weapon of choice was the $1, $2, and $3 menu. It was a brilliant marketing tool to get people into the building. But for the independent franchisee, it was a nightmare. Corporate was forcing them to sell specific burgers and drinks at a devastating loss. The franchisee was paying for the labor, the electricity, the real estate, and the rising cost of beef. They were bleeding cash on every discounted transaction, praying the customer would buy highly profitable French fries to offset the loss. By late 2018, the franchisees broke. They banded together and formed an independent group called the National Owners Association. Their explicit purpose was to revolt against the corporate executives in Chicago. They looked at the mandate for cheap, loss-leading food, and they refused to comply. The franchisees won. The cheap food you grew up with didn't disappear because of simple inflation. It disappeared because the people actually cooking it realized the corporate office was sacrificing their livelihoods for a marketing gimmick. The illusion of cheap food finally collided with the physical reality of the supply chain. Our professional pays $12 for his fast food meal. He turns the steering wheel to drive home. It is a freezing night. He presses the button on his dashboard to turn on the heated seats. A message pops up on the digital screen. Please subscribe to activate this feature. Why are companies trying to turn physical ownership into a recurring monthly payment? This is not a theoretical concept. BMW actually attempted to do this. They installed the physical heating coils in the seats at the factory. The hardware was already in the car the customer purchased, but they placed a digital lock on the software, demanding $18 a month to allow the electricity to flow. They rolled this out heavily in the United Kingdom and South Korea.
The corporate world is obsessed with recurring revenue. They want to turn every physical object in your life into a digital toll booth. But there is a very powerful lesson hidden in this exact story. The media often tells us that corporations are invincible, that they will force us into a subscription-only future and we will have no choice but to comply. The backlash against BMW was immediate, visceral, and catastrophic. It wasn't just anger, it was a fundamental rejection of the psychological violation of ownership. By September 2023, the pressure became too great. BMW board member Peter Nota officially announced they were killing the heated seat subscription. His exact words to the press were telling. He said, "Perception is reality." They didn't stop because it was unethical. They stopped because the consumer outrage threatened the core prestige of the brand. Consumer outrage actually won. Capital cannot force behavior if the underlying psychology is broken. You can see the exact same failure in the digital world. In 2020, Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman raised a staggering $1.7 billion to create Quibi, a mobile-only streaming subscription. They had the biggest celebrities. They had the best directors. They had unlimited cash. They launched in April of 2020. By October of 2020, just 6 months later, the entire company was dead. It is one of the fastest, most spectacular financial incinerations in modern history. Why? Because the human attention span cannot be bought by force. Subscriptions are no longer worth your money because the industry selling them have mistaken your temporary convenience for infinite loyalty. Trying to escape the rising cost of everything, our professional decides to stop buying new items. The next weekend, he visits a local thrift store to find a secondhand jacket. He scans the racks. But something is wrong. The clothes feel cheap. They are paper thin. The stitching is frayed. And strangely, the prices are shockingly high. A worn synthetic shirt is priced at $12. Why did secondhand shopping stop being a good deal?
For decades, the thrift store was the ultimate hack against consumerism. It was the place where quality goods went to live a second life. Today, it is a graveyard of fast fashion. To understand why a used sweater is no longer worth your money, you have to look at a piece of obscure international trade legislation passed in 2016.
It was called the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. Buried inside this legislation was an adjustment to something called the de minimis loophole, specifically Section 321. For years, the U.S. government allowed foreign packages worth less than $200 to enter the country duty-free. It was meant to make life easier for tourists bringing back souvenirs or people mailing small gifts. But in 2016, the government raised that threshold from $200 to $800. They thought they were cutting red tape. What they actually did was open the floodgates for global retail. Foreign companies like Shein and Temu realized they didn't need to build massive retail stores in America. They didn't need to pay commercial import duties on giant shipping containers. They could just ship millions of individual, hyper-cheap, plastic-based garments directly to American front doors. As long as the individual package was under $800, it bypassed the tariffs entirely. This loophole fundamentally broke the secondary clothing market. Thrift stores were suddenly flooded with millions of pieces of hyper-cheap clothing. Because the original garments were only designed to be worn 3 times before falling apart, the thrift stores had no quality inventory left to sell. To cover their own rising overhead costs, the thrift stores had to raise prices on low-quality items. You aren't finding a deal anymore. You are just buying the physical one-off of a 2016 tax loophole. Leaving the thrift store empty-handed, our professional drives to a major electronics retailer. He needs a new laptop for work. He finds one he likes, but at the register, the cashier is persistent. The associate asks if he wants to add a 3-year protection plan. The cashier warns him that if he breaks the screen, the repair will cost more than the device. He might even drop a subtle threat, implying that if the laptop is taken to an independent repair shop, the manufacturer will void the warranty entirely.
Our professional panics. He spends the extra $80. Why are consumers paying for protection they may barely use? First, the threat about voiding the warranty actually goes against federal consumer protection rules. By law, unless a manufacturer provides the repair parts completely for free, they cannot void your warranty just because you went to an independent repair shop. They use this threat to push you into their highly controlled repair ecosystem. But the true genius is the extended warranty itself. Most consumers believe they are buying protection from the store they are standing in. You aren't. You are likely buying it from a massive, invisible third-party corporation. Whether you buy a warranty through a major cell carrier, a retail store, or a massive online marketplace, you are usually dealing with this same shadow company, a business bringing in billions of dollars in estimated annual revenue. Their entire business model relies on an industry term called breakage. Breakage is human nature monetized. It is the statistical certainty that a massive percentage of consumers will buy the warranty out of fear and then simply forget they bought it. Or if their device does break, the claims process will be so convoluted that the consumer will simply give up and buy a new device. The house wins because the game is designed to exhaust you. And sometimes, the manufacturer doesn't even wait for the device to break. Sometimes the lifespan of your technology is a variable they actively control. For years, people talked about planned obsolescence as if it were just a rumor. Then came a massive industry scandal. One of the biggest tech giants in the world quietly pushed software updates to older devices, intentionally throttling their performance. They claimed it was to prevent unexpected shutdowns from aging batteries. But the consequence was absolute. Millions of people held a perfectly functioning piece of glass and metal in their hands. They noticed it was slow. They assumed the phone was functionally dead. They walked into a store and handed over $1,000 for a new one. In early 2024, Apple finally started mailing out checks to settle the class action lawsuit. The payout for forcing millions of people into buying new phones? $92.17. He leaves the electronics store. He goes back to his apartment. He sits at the kitchen island and opens his banking app. He is looking at his savings. He is preparing for a major life event. He wants to buy an engagement ring. When he visits a jewelry store, the salesman offers him a choice. He can buy a natural diamond, or he can buy a lab-grown diamond, which is marketed as a modern, trendy, sterile alternative to ancient natural stones. How much of the value of a diamond is physical, and how much is cultural manipulation? We are taught that lab diamonds are a new technology disrupting an ancient tradition. Almost everything about that premise is false. Let's start with the tradition.
The rule that you should spend 2 months' salary on an engagement ring is not a historical tradition. It was an advertising metric fabricated out of thin air. It was popularized by the advertising agency N.W. Ayer, specifically a female copywriter named Mary Frances Garrity, who in 1947 also coined the phrase, "a diamond is forever." It was a brilliantly executed psychological campaign to make a highly abundant stone feel rare and necessary. But what about the lab diamonds, the new technology? If you go back to December 16, 1954, a researcher at General Electric named H. Tracy Hall invented the first commercially successful lab-grown diamond using a belt press. The technology is 70 years old. So why did lab-grown diamonds suddenly become cheap and accessible only recently? Because of a deliberate, aggressive sabotage strategy. By 2018, the natural diamond monopoly De Beers realized they could no longer stop the production of lab-grown diamonds. The technology was widespread. Identical carbon structures were flooding the market. If people realized a diamond could simply be printed in a warehouse, the illusion of scarcity would shatter. So De Beers did something unexpected. They launched their own lab-grown diamond brand called Lightbox.
They shockingly priced them at a flat rate of $800 a carat. More importantly, they refused to issue standard grading certificates for them. Industry analysts watched in awe. By pricing them so low and refusing to authenticate their quality, De Beers was deliberately trying to crash the market price of all lab-grown stones. They wanted to permanently relegate the lab diamond to the status of cheap costume jewelry. They sacrificed their own lab-grown profits to protect the mythology of the natural stone. When you buy a diamond today, you are paying for a 1947 advertising slogan and a 2018 corporate sabotage campaign. The ring, the laptop, the food, they all drain the checking account. But they are not the heaviest financial anchor in our professional's life. That anchor is sitting in the driveway. He looks at his monthly budget. A massive percentage of his income is going toward his car payment. Financial influencers constantly tell the middle class to stop buying new cars and buy used instead. But they completely ignore the true poison in the modern automotive market. Why does the monthly payment hide the real price? A decade ago, signing a 72-month or 84-month car loan was a rarity. It was a 7-year commitment. It was considered financial suicide. Today, 84-month loans make up a massive chunk of the market. This was not driven by consumer demand. It was driven by Wall Street bundling subprime auto loans into asset-backed securities, similar to the housing crisis of 2008. To keep the financial system fed, dealerships had to sell more cars at higher prices. But the average walker wasn't making more money. So the dealers stretched the loan. By pushing an 84-month loan, the dealership can hide a skyrocketing vehicle purchase price behind a manageable monthly payment. The customer looks at the monthly number and signs the paper. They do not realize that cars depreciate violently. By year 3 of a 7-year loan, the vehicle is worth a fraction of what they owe. They are trapped in negative equity. They are completely underwater for up to 5 years. The dealership knows this. Wall Street knows this. They placed a 7-year collar on a depreciating asset purely to create a financial instrument they could trade. It is the next morning. The 34-year-old professional wakes up. He opens his phone. He authorizes a payment for a subscription. He looks at his car loan balance. He considers ordering coffee. When you look at the entire board, you realize something deeply uncomfortable. The problem was never just one expensive meal. It was the accumulation of invisible mechanisms across modern life. The economy is not broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to. We were raised to believe that a transaction was a simple exchange of value. I give you money, you give me a product. But the modern financial system has evolved beyond the product. The product is now just the bait. The true purpose of the transaction is to get you to opt into a system of continuous extraction. They don't want to sell you the car. They want to sell you the financing. They don't want to sell you the meal. They want to charge you for the software that delivers it. They don't want you to own anything because ownership is a dead end for corporate growth. Millions of people will wake up today and believe they are buying convenience, but they aren't.
We are no longer buying things. We are simply paying the daily